Welcome back to the Harmony Inspired Health podcast. I hope you're having a wonderful day, no matter where you're tuning into, over far and beyond and all over the world. I appreciate you being here. And today we're going to be diving into a topic that affects almost every woman I work with, from the high achieving entrepreneur to the stay-at-home mum juggling life's millions of tabs. And what these women do have in common is they often say to me, feel like I'm constantly wired, but I'm so tired, or I can't relax even when I try. Or they'll often ask, why do I feel so anxious, even when there's nothing specifically going wrong in my life? Like nothing should be triggering this amount of anxiety in me. And if you have any of those statements or questions roaming around in your mind, then this episode is for you too. We're going to be talking about the journey from cortisol chaos, that fight or flight hamster wheel, to nervous system nirvana, where you feel safe, grounded, and fully in your body. This is the real glow up, not skin deep, but soul deep. So let's start by defining what is cortisol chaos. Because before we can regulate, we must understand. Cortisol is your body's primary stress hormone. Now, it's not a villain. I know we've probably all heard quite a bit about cortisol these days. Cortisol, like adrenal fatigue and producing too much cortisol, and cortisol's bad. But we actually need cortisol to survive. It's actually a survival tool. We just need it in the right amounts, like everything in life, right? So too much cortisol is not good. But on the flip side, too little cortisol is also not good. So the problem really becomes when cortisol, just constant production of cortisol at a higher level, becomes your baseline, and it's not the hormone that you produce as an emergency backup. Then we can also see the problem flip, where you start to produce so much cortisol that the communication pathways between your brain and your adrenals, where cortisol is produced, sends messages saying, hang on, like we are overproducing here. We cannot keep this up, girlfriend. We need to shut that down. And so then it shuts down the cortisol production and you produce too little to support yourself. Now, signs of cortisol chaos can differ from person to person, but what I most commonly see in my practice is women suffering with insomnia, or they're waking up really wired at around like 2 to 3 a.m. They just wake up and they can't get back to sleep because they are wide awake, but then they feel exhausted by midday. I see women having digestive issues, especially with constipation or bloating, exacerbation of PMS symptoms, irregular cycles, or perimenopausal flare-ups. Anxiety is really common, brain fog, and just like irritability. I also see women that can feel really numb or are really hyperreactive. So when I say hyperreactive, that can be to any kind of situation, like flying off the handle at your kids and husband. But it can also be like if someone is sitting next to you and they accidentally drop their drink bottle and it makes a little bit of a clang and you just like freak the hell out. You're like, oh my God, like you just jump out of your skin and you're just so high alert all the time. So if any of this sounds familiar to you, then you could be in cortisol chaos. Now, in Ayurveda, this picture screams Vata imbalance. Vata, one of the Ayurvedic doshas, governs the central nervous system. And Vata is governed by the elements of ether and air from an Ayurvedic standpoint. And so it's responsible for movement in the body and our central nervous system. But when out of balance, it can also lead to instability and depletion. So when we have this cortisol chaos or this Vata imbalance, you can't just green juice or supplement your way out of this or your way out of a fried nervous system without tending to the root cause. And that root is safety. Yep, it is safety in your body and in your mind, which brings me to the nervous system basics through an Ayurvedic lens. But what I want to do is I want to blend Vedic wisdom with neuroscience so you have a really good understanding of how this root of safety ties into cortisol chaos. So let's look at the nervous system. You have two branches of the autonomic nervous system. You have the sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for your fight, flight, or freeze mode, and your parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for rest, digest, and restore. Now, Ayurveda may not use this terminology, but it absolutely speaks to these states through the doshas. So if we're looking at a vata dosha or a vata imbalance, we may be seeing sympathetic overload in somebody where they're having high cortisol or they're feeling really depleted. If we are seeing a kapha imbalance when it comes to the nervous system, we may be seeing that person always in freeze state, stagnation, or a state of depression. Whereas a pitta imbalance may present as hyper control, performance stress, or burnout and irritability, or always on the edge, Your nervous system state drives your digestion hormones, sleep, libido, and clarity. So regulating your nervous system isn't optional. It is absolutely foundational to healing. And that brings me to my next point. And this is where I want to discuss trauma-informed Ayurveda, because this is the piece that most people skip. And it's why many women don't get results with managing their nervous system dysregulation or their cortisol just from supplements and nutritional protocols alone. Now, in Ayurveda, we talk about samskaras, which are impressions or patterns stored in the mind and body. Trauma in this context is an unresolved samskara that hijacks the nervous system. If you have been living in high alert for years, so maybe that's because you've undergone a lot of childhood stress, or you're constantly trying to achieve and people please, maybe you've had a chronic illness, or even if you've just been caught up in the hustle culture over the last few years, your nervous system doesn't trust rest. So we have to gently rewire the body's experience of safety. And so what does this mean? It means we need to be able to feel safe in our mind and our body, and that communication pathway needs to be clear, because our mind and our body are intricately connected. You cannot separate the two. So ways that we can allow safety to enter our mind and body, we can do this through numerous different ways. One of the ways that I love to invite safety into my body is breath work that down regulates the nervous system. Now, not all breath work is created equal. I have seen people of a Vata constitution go and do a breathwork class where that breathwork is increasing the sympathetic nervous system. So it's a lot of hyperventilating, and they come out feeling so much worse because they haven't down-regulated their nervous system and they haven't been supported with safe breath. That's why I run the ISO Vedic Breathwork Practitioner Training, because I saw so many people doing it so wrong and it becoming more damaging. But in saying that, there are so many different beautiful ways of being able to support the nervous system through the breath. Another way that we can do that from an Ayurvedic perspective is called self-abhyanga, which is a self-oil massage. And that soothes the vata. It regulates the lymphatic system. It increases oxytocin, that feel-good love hormone in the body, which makes us feel really nourished and safe. And we use the oil to do this self-massage because in Sanskrit, in the Ayurvedic language, sneha is the word for oleation, for oil. And also the word sneha represents the word love. So it's really giving yourself that deep self-nourishment and self-love that produces a safe nervous system. Another way is to make sure that we're eating really grounding foods and we're having a routine that will stabilize our energy. because without routine and we're all over the place, we don't know what's coming next. We're constantly like just trying to figure life out as it comes at us. Will dysregulate our nervous system. Other ways that we can feel safe is through touch, pleasure, and community to repattern any isolation and disconnection that may make you feel unsafe. Having really supportive people around you, feeling safe with your own boundaries. Now, remember, you don't need to go and meditate in a cave. You need to make your body a safe place to live in. Okay, so we live in this modern world. We live in a little bit of chaos, but how can we like create internal peace instead of internal chaos? There are specific daily tools for nervous system Nirvana that we use in Ayurveda. So let's get a little bit more practical with these tools so that you can start today. Now, I mentioned before that having routine helps us feel safe. Even though a lot of Vata people, they don't love it because they don't love rules, they don't like structure, they like to, go with free flow. But if they're in an imbalanced state and their nervous system is dysregulated, then this is one of the worst things that they can do. Actually, having a routine will help them feel like they have boundaries around themselves and keep them in a nice, safe container. So a beautiful routine would be waking up with the sun. And you want to wake up with the sunshine so that you can align yourself in the Vata time of day. So we don't want to wake up at 2 a.m., but between 2 and 6 a.m. is the Vata time of day. Now, this also will be dependent on where you live in the world. But at the moment, I'm on the Gold Coast in Australia and it is light at 5 a.m. So I can wake up at 5 a.m. and it is a perfect time to start my day. Then you could wash your face with some nice warm water to stimulate the senses. And maybe you want to add some nausea, which is oil drops in the nose. Now, this really helps to calm the mind and nourish the nervous system. You could then maybe do yourself abhyanga here, which is the warm sesame oil massage before going to have your shower, or perhaps you want to do some movement first, then come home and do the abhyanga before having your shower. Again, this is going to really be very supportive to stabilize and ground the Vata dosha. There are different herbs that we use in Ayurveda to help support nervous system. So things like ashwagandha, brahmi, shatavari, they all work really beautifully for our nervous system regulation. But again, just like one man's medicine can be another man's poison. That goes for food, that goes for herbs, because the way that we work in Ayurveda is to prescribe different things, whether it be lifestyle, nutrition, or herbs, based on the individual's constitution. So you should always check with your practitioner before you just start diving into different herbs. Because I have had clients that have started ashwagandha, for instance, to help regulate their adrenals and their stress response. And it was overriding. It was too much for them and they were feeling more wired. So we have to make sure that we get this right, and we have to understand that herbal medicine, just because it comes from plants, doesn't mean it is not mighty, mighty powerful. Now, another way that we can really support our body and our nutrition is to have warm cooked foods. So we do want to ditch like the cold smoothies and raw foods if you're really anxious or depleted, because what we need to do is bring in some more of those warm, grounding, nourishing foods to help stabilize the Vata dosha. And we have to get sleep, guys. This is so important. So we need to have a early bedtime, really, like lights out before 10 p.m. I say lights out before 9 p.m., 9:30 if you can. But let's say before 10 to avoid the second wind of the Pitta time of day. So after 10 p.m., the Pitta energy comes back into action. And even if we've been pretty tired all day and then we've just pushed through and then we finally, we think about going to bed, but we go, oh no, I've got this to do or I've got that to do, and we stay up past 10, all of a sudden you're not tired anymore. You've got this second wind and then it takes ages to wind down. So having a bedtime routine and getting to bed early is so important, not only for like your detoxification process and all of that, but it helps to regulate your stress hormones. It helps to regulate your cortisol. Cortisol should naturally be higher in the morning and it should be lower in the evening to help you get to sleep. So if you are doing anything in the evenings that are winding yourself up, like watching true crime on TV or listening to true crime podcasts, or I don't know, or just like doing infinite scroll, then you are allowing, especially if you're getting triggered by it, you're raising the cortisol levels. And high cortisol, it's going to be really hard to sleep, even if you are really tired and exhausted. So let's work on our bedtime routine. I always say to a lot of my clients, lay down with your legs up the wall, an eye pillow on for 10 minutes, have a guided meditation going just before you want to go to sleep. And that will automatically drop you into a parasympathetic nervous system. And then you're going to get so much better quality sleep. Also, don't have a big, heavy meal within 3 hours of going to bed. Now, we also spoke about connection before and co-regulation. So when we are looking at helping our mind and body feel safe, we want to find safe spaces where you feel seen and supported. The nervous system heals in relationships, not in isolation. But those relationships have to be healthy. And I've spoken about this so many times, but what I see a lot of the time is that women don't put boundaries in place with themselves, but they don't put boundaries in place with their relationships. And this causes a lot of stress on the nervous system. This stress will start to create cortisol chaos. So we need to feel safe and supported in our relationships. Sometimes we need to have those harder conversations so the rest of our time in those relationships is easier. We need to find those friends that really support us, that make us laugh. Laughter and joy and having fun moments, that is so good for your mind and body, so good for your hormones and your cortisol level. If you love adventure, finding a group of people that you can go on treks with or do some type of adventures with, that is so good for the soul and so nourishing for your hormonal levels and gets you into that nervous system nirvana. Because joy through connection is so important and really overlooked. With all of this being said, the real glow up. And, when I say glow up, we often hear about, oh, I've just, I've turned 40 and I've had this great glow up. Look at my skin. And I've done this like radical exercise routine and nutrition and my body's banging at 40. And this is like my glow up. No, the real glow up is nervous system sovereignty. So forget the aesthetics for now. We're talking about the real internal glow up. And this glow up is sleeping through the night without racing thoughts, feeling safe, saying no to people and no to things you don't want to do, creating from overflow, not obligation, trusting your body's signals instead of fearing them, leading your life, not living in reactivity. And this is exactly what happens when you go from cortisol chaos to nervous system nirvana. You stop just managing symptoms and you start living in alignment. And the world around you shifts because your inner world is no longer a war zone. And this internal glow up, this will give you that external glow up that many are after because it starts with these subtle energies. In Ayurveda, we talk about these subtle energies of prana, which is our life force energy, of ojas, which is our vitality and our immunity, and tejas, which is our strength. And it's that inner glow and light. And when those all come together, your outer glow up is evident, and the outer glow up will happen with ease, without restrictive dieting, without smashing yourself at the gym, because you'll be in more of a sattvic state of mind and a sattvic state of body. And sattvic state means lightness, purity, and clarity, and that will shine through. And you won't feel like you're always on edge and you're feeling anxious and nervous, which can be seen to the naked eye. And so the real glow up is supporting your nervous system. So if you loved this episode, make sure you share it with a friend, a sister, a mum, an auntie, a woman who has been stuck in survival mode. And don't forget to tag me on Instagram, Harmony Inspired Ayurveda, and let me know your biggest takeaway. And if you are ready to go deeper to really regulate your nervous system, reclaim your rhythm, and live fully in feminine power, then I invite you to come and explore one of our Ayurvedic pathways through the Ayurveda Alchemist Academy. So we do have the embodiment pathway, which helps you step into your higher self, helps you regulate your nervous system. And you can do this pathway without doing the certification part of it. Or if you are someone who would love to introduce this type of practice to your clients or create a business from it, then we also have our level 1 Ayurveda health consultant practitioner program as well. And if you haven't already, go grab a copy of my book, Ayurveda and the Alchemy of Her. Thank you so much for being here with me. I really, really do appreciate you taking the time, tuning in to better yourself and support the people around you. Namaste. Much love.